Hey everybody, John O'Connor here again. Today we're going to be talking about character building. The 26 questions the DM needs to be asking the player, and the player needs to answer their DM. This is part 2 of the same idea. Today we're going to get a little more into the meat of the questions. The first part of the list is a lot more superficial, and again it was based on the idea of when you walk in the bar, what other people are going to notice. This part is more about political views, religious beliefs, the fundamentals of your character's core. What makes them tick? So with that, let's start with number 14. Does your character enjoy ale? And if so, how often? It's kind of a broad question, and it can also apply to hard alcohol, but really it's the idea of, are you drinking heavily, moderately, or do you just not enjoy the hobby? This is one of those things that's going to vary from person to person. A lot of people are going to choose moderate or heavy, but it's going to come up. A lot of people like to go to the tavern at the end of the day, so what are you going to order? If not the ale, how do you celebrate? What do you do to, hey, we took care of that, and move on to the next task? Right along with that, the next one's also another vice kind of question. Does your character enjoy smoking? Again, heavily, moderately, never. The addendum I add to this one, though, which I think is kind of cool and, a little fun to do. If your character enjoys smoking, how do they do it? Because there's a lot of different ways to get your nicotine fix. Do they just chew the tobacco? Do they roll it up in their own cigars or cigarettes? Pipe is also a fun way to go about it. The other thing I've added to my campaign is the hookah. I know it's not traditional in a European medieval kind of setting of with D&D normally is, but I think it adds a nice little flair, and it makes it so if your character does enjoy the hookah, it has to be a special occasion. It can't just be every day, because those things are kind of hard to port around, and you're not going to be taking on every adventure. Number 16. Your character's level. A real basic question. What's your character's level, and what do they have levels in? This is just, by this point, yes, we're going to be getting into the kind of the mechanics of it. What are you wanting to be? Why do you want to be? That kind of thing. The reason I put this question so far down the list is because I don't want you to be building a class and then putting personality around it. I want you to have a character who comes into a class. That's why number 17 on the list is, if you have any story, which I encourage you to do, what is the story behind your feat and skills? Why do you have those as opposed to others? What was your driving idea behind taking track if you're not the ranger? Or why does your wizard have obscure materials? Why do they find that efficient? Along those same kind of questions, what's your weapon of choice? Why do you favor that? It's a fun question for fighters, barbarians, anyone who focuses on melee. I like the idea that you would choose something not because your race or your class is good at it, but because that's something your character likes. I always enjoy giving characters short swords more so than long swords. And I like when they talk about that a little bit, well, this belonged to somebody, or this was handed down to me. Sometimes having a less powerful weapon, even if your class says you can have a more powerful weapon, can make sense if there's a good story behind it. Which that's what I love. I love form over function. So, in a story, if you're given a shitty weapon, it's not even masterwork, but, it belonged to somebody who was a challenge at some point. It's fun to carry that around and make that your weapon. Yeah, maybe after a while you need to send it back to the smith and get it upgraded or you worked on. But there's a story behind it which makes you want to keep it. So that's why I always ask, your weapon of choice, and if you have any ideas, why do you use that? Use it. I love that idea. Going off my notes today, so my first video, my voice was a little weird, and I was a tad bit scatterbrained. I'm hoping now that I've got a little bit of rest and changed my scarf up, that this one's a little more coherent. Alright, number 19. What languages does your character speak? Another fun one, especially if you get a lot of bonus languages. I like the idea of, there's a story behind everything. So, why is your character this lowly human speaking Elven? What gives him the right to know that language? Or, why does your paladin know Abyssal? What advantage did he think having that would do? So, I know on a character sheet it's just things you fill in, but if you take the little extra time to go, well, there's a reason I learned that. There's an idea behind it. I'm a big fan of that. Number 20 can be tweaked for your campaign, but the way it's phrased for mine is, where is your character from in Lexington? Now, Lexington is the world that I use, but if you're using Eberron, Forgotten Realms, Greyhawk, or even in a different style of game altogether, you can still apply this question. It's just a basic, where do you come from, because different places have different cultures. We talked a little bit about this when you choose your race, but this also kind of reinforces it. So even if you're human, but you come from a high elven concentration, people might think that you adopt some of their customs, or it might explain why you act a certain way. Well, I was from here, even though I'm this. So, basic idea, whereas in the first one, what's your race? Well, that's what people perceive before you ever speak. This is more to the fact of, when you start speaking, they start learning, and then they might go after, well, you're really persuasive. Are you from somewhere on the map where there's a lot of merchants and traders? Alright, next question. Talk about your character's family and upbringing. On this one, I want to know about your parents, your siblings, and your close family friends. I want to know the connections that you have and the people you cherish. The reason I want to know these things is because I like to bring in families. I like the idea of the adventurer returning home at some point, and his family or her family seeing how much they've grown and developed into their own person. I also like the idea of, when you go home, you might revert a little bit back to the way you were when you first were there. The idea that you act a certain way in front of your adventuring friends, your co-workers, but when they get to see you with your family, they see a different side of you than when you were with them, or just with them. 22. Personal favorite of mine. I love this one only because I think you need to have faith. What god or goddess do you worship, and why? Now, I've had a couple characters that were agnostic. Not that they didn't believe in God, they just didn't put faith in God, kind of thing. Characters who don't pray in my campaign, there's not a lot of penalties at them put toward them right now. I might change that later on. But it's one of those things that, if you have a divinity that you firmly believe in, I want to know why. What set your ideas about that? Was it the patron deity of your home or your city? Was it someone you prayed to in a time of need and something good happened? Why do you worship this particular god when there are multitudes to choose from? Next on the list, 23. Why does your character adventure? This is a very open-ended question. You can give me a very short response, you can give me a very in-detailed one. But I want to know, what makes your character go, I want to leave the comfort of the city, leave the comfort of my home, leave the security of knowing, hey, I'll be safe if I stay here, and go out and explore and take on challenges that the commoner and the expert are going to go, no, not for me. So it's always fun to know that about your character. After that one, 24. What has your character lost along the way? This could be a person, it could be a thing, but, what have they had to give up to be where they are today? Some characters haven't, and for those characters, I think you're level 1, 2, 3, or 4. If you're higher up, I think you planned your character just a little wrong, or you're, you gotta have a little bit of balance there. The higher you go up, I think there should be more personal sacrifice in your family and your friends, you know, because you're going to have a life before you start adventuring, good or bad. And once you start associating with your party, months on end, when you come back, things just aren't going to be the same. And maybe someone in your party you lost, and you hold that dearly. Or it could be someone that while you were gone, and during your first mission, you came back and you realized, oh, so-and-so got married, and I really wanted to talk to them. Or the tribe of goblins down the hill finally got aggressive, came up, took some people out, and one of them just happened to be your father. So always a good idea to have some kind of loss. .25 kind of blends 23 and 24 together. What challenges has your character had to overcome to get to where they are today? This is a question I'll ask at the beginning of a campaign and the middle, the end. It's always something, you know, why have you been able to get to here? What have you had to do? Who have you had to beat up? What fears have you had to overcome? What virtues have you had to take on? What's brought you to this particular point? It encourages self-reflection for the player looking into the character, and it makes you feel just a little more involved with what you've been doing. It's not just numbers on a sheet anymore. It's, I was controlling somebody's life. I better make my decisions count. Sorry that I keep taking drinks between each little comment. I'm actually drinking out of my Heartmore and Imperial Designs coffee mug. I just have a bit of a sore throat. I'm a little under the weather. That's why the first video, I think my voice was a little screwed up, plus lack of sleep. Last question, 26. This is the creme de la creme, the thing I love to ask players to do. And I especially would love any feedback that anybody has on this, because I think there should be some more items added to this list, but not sure what to do. So, 26. From most to least important, place the following words in quintessential order. Gold, sex, honor, family, peace, humor, justice, law, friendship, knowledge, honesty, love, and power. If you didn't catch that, again, look in the description. I will have these 13 questions put there. I like to have that right there as the last question, just so as you're progressing along, you can always go back to, you know, what's important to your character. After you've done everything else, I find that this should be one of the easiest things to do. Yeah, there'll be a couple, do I like this more than this kind of questions, but for the most part, you should be able to go, this is what I think is important because I did all the other prep work. I'd love to add a couple more items to that list. If you have any good ideas, please leave a comment. But that question right there was one of the first ones I ever came up with, and I built the rest of the questionnaire kind of around it, because I thought that was an important idea. What is important to your particular character? Well, that's the second half of the 26 questions. I'd love to get you guys' feedback. I've been enjoying the comments so far, both on the YouTube RPG Brigade page on Facebook and on my own channel. Thank you to my subscribers. Once again, I'm going to give a shout out to Dungeon Master 50 for giving me the nickname Double D, and I can't wait to talk to you guys again. Have a great day.